Right now, Donald Trump is saying the Strait of Hormuz is mine. Iran, in contrast, may be saying, no, the strait is mined. That appears to be the latest strategic twist in the Iran war. But the sea mining situation is not as straightforward as it seems. From Iran's perspective, there is a significant drawback in trying to threaten and then implement the strategy. From the US perspective, it is instructive of how it is dangerous to go alone in the NATO world that you live in. So forget about the lines on maps. Today, it's mines and seas. Now, the basic problem is as straightforward as it appears. The Strait of Hormuz is narrow and has a whole bunch of oil sitting behind it. Iran does not need to litter the choke point with very many mines to convince international shippers to steer clear of the area. As it stands now, there are reports that Iran has dropped a small layer of mines. It is worth reminding everyone that this is a fog of war situation, and there is no direct evidence that that assessment is correct at the moment. If you told me that none were dropped or a ton were dropped, I would believe you. Trump insists that the strait is safe to travel, but only a few ships are trying to transit through each day, and some of the tankers in the area are not having a good time. Here is the big strategic problem. Iran wants to control the Strait of Hormuz, but if Iran mines the Strait of Hormuz, it no longer controls it. Confusing? Let me explain. At the heart of today's question is who dictates the endpoint of the war. Obviously, that is a layered question because war termination can depend on the two parties reaching a deal. But in many conflicts, only one country has the ability to one day decide to just stop, and that alone is enough to end the conflict. For example, if the Kremlin one day ordered all Russian troops to retreat back to internationally recognized Federation territory, that would be the end of things. Yes, in principle, Ukraine could march across the border and pursue the retreating Russian soldiers, but the domestic and international support for that would be lacking. Over in Iran, the United States is the one that could snap its fingers and end the conflict this very hour if it wanted to. Sure, Iran could continue bombing US partners in the region, but that would invite renewed strikes from the United States, and Tehran does not have the political appetite for that. Of course, the diplomatic dialogue may suggest otherwise. Here we have Iran's president saying that there are 3 preconditions for Iran to accept an end to the war. Recognition of Iran's legitimate rights, unclear what that means. Payment of reparations, yeah, sure. And firm international guarantees against future aggression. Who will make those guarantees, no one knows. Indeed, we are looking at a clear case where you should not listen to what leaders say. But you can watch what I do with my subscription to the sponsor of today's video, Ground News. Yep, I found this article as I was reading through my daily briefing, which is a fantastic way for me to get ready to start my work in the morning. Ground News is a credible source for information, even if sometimes the media has the unfortunate job of reporting on leaders saying things that are not so credible. And by going to ground.news/linesonmaps, or scanning the QR code on your screen, you can take a fantastic 40% off Advantage plan, which gives you access to all this and more. So thanks again to Ground News for sponsoring today's video. Okay, to recap, the United States is prosecuting the war. Meanwhile, Iran wants it to end, and will accept an ending even if it involves none of these demands. The way that you end a war is by convincing the other side that there will be good things if the war ends, and there will be bad things if the war continues. Mining is like burning a bridge. It is possible to rebuild bridges, of course, but you cannot just say, sorry, and the bridge will magically resurrect itself from the water. If Iran litters the strait with mines, it will take substantial time to demine the area. Counterintuitively, that makes continuing the war less costly from the other side's perspective. Note that I am not saying that the United States benefits from the mining. It does not. Rather, mining just saddles the United States with future losses one way or another, and delays the eventual benefits from peace. But that is a complicated way of saying that the US costs left to be paid decrease, which then increases US bargaining leverage. It would be different if Iran had not already de facto locked down the strait. But basically, nothing is safely passing through without Iran's permission, and so all the mining does is prolong the shutdown past the point where the parties try to reopen it. Also, let's not forget that Iran needs to use the strait as well. And once the mines are laid, they are not going to discriminate between their intended targets and Iran-friendly ships. Consequently, threatening to lay mines is better than actually laying them. Like the unrealistic Iranian demands from earlier, the problem from a coercive perspective here is that threats are only as useful as the credibility of the actor to follow through on them. Hence the dicey situation. Sorry, there are just too many conflicts for me to keep everything straight. And I mean straight with a GH. Geez, it is just a war soup right now. If it is feasible, the better strategy for Iran to control the strait is with naval drones. Kyiv has already proven these to be tactically effective at driving Russian craft way far away from Ukrainian shores. And opting for drones controls not only whom they hit, allowing Iran to push a handful of its friendly tankers through since the start of the war, but also when the passageway reopens. And indeed, what we do have direct evidence of is Iran hitting ships with said naval drones. But let's take those reports of mining at face value. The question then turns to what the United States can do to counteract the mines. There is a two-step approach here: proactive limitation of the laying and post-laying mitigation. On the proactive part, it is the same story that we discussed as it relates to drones and ballistic missiles. There was a conscious decision made to have fewer anti-drone defenses than, say, Ukraine, because the United States has significantly better capacity to project power into its rival country and destroy the targets at their source. Well, same thing for the mine laying. If you destroy every ship that might lay a mine, then there will be no minefield. Now, I have seen a bunch of criticism that the United States was late to start the anti-mine layer portion of the campaign, and that this was an obvious blunder on the Pentagon's part. I mean, did no one there watch that 90-minute warning from 18 months ago? Well, as fun as it is to make keyboard warrior complaints, the United States only has so many platforms from which to deliver bombs, and there is a clear order of operations here. First, you target the anti-aircraft systems. The faster that they are gone, the more sorties that you can fly, and the more sorties that you can fly safely. Second, you target ballistic missiles and drones, platforms ideally as the first substep, and then production capacity as the second substep. That is because they are the more proximate threat. It could be an hour between Iran giving the order and the target getting hit. Then perhaps you might want to start looking at the Iranian ports for mine-laying ships. One significant problem here is that Iran could divide the labor by distributing a handful of mines to a large number of boats, including civilian craft. That would substantially raise the number of strikes necessary before the United States could feel confident that the situation is under control. I mentioned earlier that Trump insists that there is no sea mine problem. Here is the actual quote. "We took out just about all of their mine ships in one night. Just about all of their navy is gone." He then told tankers in the area, "I think they should use the strait." Well, mines are not the only thing keeping the tankers away. But the possibility is still contributing to the problem despite Trump's reassurances. No worries though. Plan B is to remove the mines once Iran drops them. Have you seen the US defense budget? It is close to $1 trillion, and way more than double China's. Surely the Pentagon could afford a fleet of minesweepers. Nope. The United States is weeping at its lack of sweeping. Once upon a time, the answer was the Avenger class, a dedicated minesweeping vessel. 14 were built. The last one, the Chief, launched in 1993. Fast forward 20 years, and the US Navy was already phasing them out. Here are the Devastator, the Dexterous, the Gladiator, and the Sentry, all getting carted away from Bahrain. Bet you wish they were there right now. Far from assembling, only 4 Avenger-class vessels remain, each with a proposed decommissioning date of 2027. We will see if that changes. A couple of the other dedicated mine removal options take to the skies. One is the MH-53E Sea Dragon, which is old and also dwindling in number. The other option is the MH-60S Seahawk, the Sea Dragon's intended replacement. Unfortunately, it has a ton of question marks about its reliability as well. It does not help that the United States was playing against the clock, trying to start the operation in Iran while there was still protester momentum in the country. As a result, a lot of these pieces remain out of position. Now, how the heck did we get here? There are two components of the problem. One is the perception of an evolving threat environment. Following the end of the Cold War, the Pentagon estimated that sea mines were no longer as critical of a threat. Given the broader defense budget cuts that came along with the peace dividend, scrapping minesweepers was an obvious choice. The United States was not going to completely abandon the enterprise, of course. The Pentagon pursued rival contracts for two classes of littoral combat ships, with sister names of Freedom and Independence. The intention was to create a jack-of-all-trades system, vessels that could turn into minesweepers, but would be relevant in combat aside from that role. In practice, though, they are not good minesweepers. The Avenger class was made of wood, an intentional design decision to reduce its magnetic signature. Not a bad idea if you want to sweep the mines rather than get blown up by one. Moreover, reconfiguring them for demining is time-consuming, and at the end of the day, they will just never be as good as a dedicated platform. The other half of the story is on the other side of the Atlantic. There is a perception in the United States that NATO is only helpful for providing a network of forward operating bases, or that unsinkable aircraft carrier known as Iceland. And if you did not learn yesterday a dozen fun facts about how Iceland is so small, then you really missed out. Failing that, NATO is only good for covering regional deficiencies, like Poland exploiting a comparative advantage by having an effective ground fighting force because it is so laser-focused on the border, or Norway having expertise in cold weather operations because, well, it is Norway. But the specialization goes beyond that. NATO has various centers of excellence in European countries, because the respective host is a genuine expert in that particular field. You might remember this from my excursion to Estonia and its center of excellence in cybersecurity, all brought about because of a Russian cyber attack due to the politics behind this statue. More relevant for today, Belgium has a center of excellence for mine clearance, where it works collaboratively with the Netherlands. Those countries not only teach technique, they have the platforms to actually sweep mines properly. And that reduced the need for the Pentagon to allocate a budget to dedicated minesweepers. Should mines become a major problem, it was possible that the United States could, dare I use this phrase, free ride off others. However, there is a significant kink in the plan as applied to Iran. With few exceptions, the Iran war has generated mixed feelings from leaders in Europe. Yes, Iran has ties to Russia, and Russia is imposing severe problems on Ukraine. But the Iran war is injecting a whole bunch of uncertainty into the global economy, which has harmful effects on Europe. Only Germany has been especially vocal in its support for the United States. That raises questions of whether the United States can actually seek the support of allied nations. What we are observing is a potential entrapment scenario in action. In alliance politics, entrapment occurs when one ally induces a second to participate in a conflict, despite the second wishing that the conflict had never started. Usually, when we think about entrapment, it is protege states forcing patron states into action. Here, it would be vice versa. You will note that Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty is specifically designed to mitigate entrapment by reducing the alliance's scope to defensive wars. That is not what we are looking at today. Iran is not the one that started this war. Despite that, we are already seeing elements of entrapment. France has deployed its aircraft carrier to the eastern Mediterranean and put some assets in the Red Sea, with discussions about eventually taking action in Hormuz. Iran may also be pushing its luck with Article 5. If you keep trying to hit a NATO non-combatant with missiles, and allied forces are already shooting them down, eventually the day may come when someone makes a motion toward invoking collective self-defense. And aside from whatever is going on there, NATO countries are free to participate as they individually see fit. They do not need an official stamp of approval from the North Atlantic Council to hunt mines if they so choose. But NATO's structure, especially as it relates to the military specialization that it encourages, still influences the Allies' decisions here outside of the Article 5 framework. It is hard to imagine that any allies would volunteer while the war is still ongoing. That said, you could also imagine that if mines are littered along the strait and a ceasefire comes into force, there will be a strong temptation to head to the Gulf. Europe needs the oil markets cleared just as much as anyone else. If allied countries are the ones with the capability to do that, then it is in their own economic interest to bite the bullet. I could spend another 15 minutes discussing how the higher oil prices are a boon to Putin, but let's save that for another time. The point is, it may be inevitable that Europe gets involved just for that reason, never mind what's going on with their own economies. If that happens, then the United States will have successfully entrapped its allies and passed on some portion of the costs of the war to Europe. Oh, the irony. Thanks again to Ground News for sponsoring today's video. Go to ground.news/linesonmaps or scan the QR code on your screen to take a fantastic 40% off Advantage plan. Meanwhile, you can learn more about my aforementioned excursion to Iceland by clicking here, or get a larger view of what is happening in the Middle East by watching this playlist. And if you enjoyed today's video, then please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Take care.